Welcome everyone to the today's festive tech calendar session. Uh, Today we are going to talk about the 12 bicep tips for Christmas. So we will see what are the bicep tips we can introduce for our daily bicep authoring, Azure Bicep authoring. So we will see what are the best practices for Azure deployment as well. So welcome you all for this session.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to our session. As Kasun mentioned, so we are going to present this as a duo of Microsoft MVPs, and we are glad to have you in this, video in this session that you are checking in. So let's tune in and see what are those 12 bicep tips for Christmas. And happy holidays to all of you before we go further. And before even go further, I want to say thank you for the organizers of this event, Festive Tech Calendar. It's in a number of years. I believe Azure, Greg, and Richard, they are continuing this tradition with the team that's supporting them. So thank you everyone for putting this event together. So let's dive into our presentation now. And of course, this festive tech calendar means that we have a cause to donate and we have a cause to support. And part of it is actually, as you see here on the screen, it's a Raspberry Pi Foundation. It's a global nonprofit. Uh, it's a global nonprofit organization with a mission to help young people to learn how to code, create, and solve meaningful problems using the technology. And as you know, it's nowadays it's more than ever. It's very vital thing that this organization is doing. We believe that every young person, whatever their background and whatever they are in the world, deserve the opportunity to learn digital skills and gain confidence to create with digital technologies. And this foundation is there to help. So, please raise the money for this noble cause.
Yeah, so you can get more detail on about the festive tech calendar on their website festivetechcalendar.com. So you can do the donation from there as well.
Yeah, sure. So next here, let's go to the introductions. Kasun.
Yeah. So my name is Kasun Rajapaksha. So I'm Azure MVP. I'm from Sri Lanka, and at the moment I'm living in Netherlands. So I have 8 years, 8+ years of experience in cloud technologies and um, infrastructure. So I have multiple certifications from Azure, and I'm always interested in new technologies around Microsoft Azure and cloud technologies. So I would like to automate everything as possible. So, and I like to share my knowledge with others. So you can find me in my LinkedIn URL, uh, and you can find my blog from kasunrajapaksha.me. So there I will blog frequently related to the cloud technologies.
Great. And this is about me, a little information. I'm also Microsoft Azure MVP and MCT. I'm also cloud architect and trying to help the customers that I'm working with day-to-day challenges that they are going through. So I've been MCT for more than 20 years, starting from no, I have been an MCT more than 16 years. Sorry, starting from 2007, and during this time frame, there were a lot of certifications that I went through, and just 24 of them are in Azure and M365 category. I'm also blogging and sharing information as a cloud marathoner. I'm one of the founders of that, and you are always welcome to visit the cloudmarathoner.com website, which actually aims to spread and help the people to learn about cloud technologies, namely Microsoft Azure, and how to get started your career in cloud development and cloud engineering. You also have my LinkedIn URL where you can get the latest post about those innovations and get to learn more about what's happening in cloud community overall. You're also welcome to check the Twitter X, where I'm also posting about this. So without any overdue, let's look at our agenda. Our agenda is actually very festive in terms of that we will try to keep it short with the tips that are helpful for you. So first we'll start from those tips. As you see here, there are 12 tips. So I'm not going to, read them out loud. We are going to just dive into those tips so that you can get most out of it. All right, so let's start with the tip number one.
Yeah, so the tip number one is we are going to talk about how we can use Azure Bicep extension effectively. So Azure team has developed extension for VS Code, Visual Studio Code, and Visual Studio. So you can use this extension to uh, improve the efficiency of your Azure Bicep authoring because it's provide lot of additional features like IntelliSense, then the code navigation. When you're authoring Bicep template, it will highlight the Azure Bicep template functions, variables, those kind of things. And when you do refactoring also, it is more easy. You can refactor all the components and links to that refactoring. Then it provide formatting. You can do a lot of formatting, and it will help you to understand your code much more easily. Then it also have inbuilt commands like to build Azure ARM, build ARM templates, or convert Bicep to ARM template, or vice versa. You can use different commands for that. And additionally, it provide visualization as well, so you can see how your resources are linked to each other when you're authoring Bicep template.
Nice. So tip number two, it's about unlocking the experimental features. With when you have Bicep project in your Visual Studio Code, you can look into the portion where you have the settings of the project, Azure Bicep, and then you would be able to unlock those experimental features, which are checkboxes, as you see here on the right side of the on this presentation. So you can use different features that are described here on the as you see, there's like deployment panes that are enabling the service and many more new experimental features which are coming from each release of Azure Bicep. You just need to make sure you have the latest Bicep version installed on your local environment so that you can enable those experimental features and get to know them as early as possible. And they bring a lot of different experience. Deployment pane is just one of them that you may love and put that as a another belt to deal with the infrastructure as a code using the Azure Bicep. So let's look at tip number three.
Yeah, tip number three is starting using Bicep param. So previously, Azure has a JSON parameter file for Bicep, but they have introduced a native parameterization file called Bicep param. So it is more flexible than JSON parameters because it is much more easy to understand and it easy to write. So it is used in the default Bicep format and much more cleaner than JSON. And it has a separate extension .bicep param file extension that is goes with the Bicep as it is. And it's also we can compile it to JSON parameter file as well.
Yeah, that's much cleaner and easier to use, so check it out. Next, we have tip number four, which is about static code analysis using the Chekhov. This is another great tool if you want to have some static code analysis integrated into your Bicep code so that you can check on risks and vulnerabilities and any misconfigurations on and many misconfigurations on your Bicep code, and as well as be compliant with with certain compliance, regulations that you have to have some, that your company or organization is trying to have in place for that specific project. So it's one of the best practices to integrate this. And one of the easiest way to do that is going to be integrating that into your CI/CD pipeline to make sure that you run those checks on regular basis. All right.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
so
Mm-hmm.
if I add a little bit more, so you
Sure.
can see in this diagram, there are some checks to be verified, so we can adjust those checks based on your requirement to the tool. Uh, so then you can have your own compliance based on your organization.
Awesome, great. Then we have tip number 5 here regarding configuring your Bicep config file. As you know, this is another file that you can add into your Bicep project. And the main benefits that you would get from this is you would have some easier and cleaner linting in your Bicep code. So you can enable those rules that are coming with Bicep config in a way that it can apply certain standards to the Bicep code across the infrastructure as a code files that you have in your Bicep code, like these Azure Bicep files. And this is another modern way to have those linting rules and standards be applied to your Bicep code project. Next, we have tip number 6.
Yeah, so the tip number 60 is using use Bicep build in your CI/CD pipelines. So what we can do is we can use Bicep build command inside your pipeline to build the Bicep, convert the Bicep template into JSON ARM templates. Then we can store it in like artifacts, and we can use it to deployment. The why we are going to use that way is if we are working with multiple teams or individuals who are changing the Bicep templates and adding new features into the template. You when you are deploying that changes, you have to make sure that you are uh, deploying the changes that are specifically for that specific change. So if you are using the same Bicep file to deploy into the CD deployment stage, then all the changes will be applied to the release without the specific changes that you need. So it's always good to convert it to the RM template and versionize in artifacts and use it.
All right, that's great. And now we have next tip, which is tip number 7. In Bicep, parameters use decorators for constraints or metadata. For example, you can use these min lengths and max lengths decorators to force a parameter to be between 3 and 20 characters. It might be, for example, a name that you want to put for your storage account or web app. Then, and while doing those, decorators, you can also look at the requirements of naming of Azure resources to make sure that you put the correct, constraints there. You can also use the description decorator to show a description of the parameter. You can reference the value for a parameter, use a parameter name, and it can be easier to organize related values by passing them as an object for this purpose. Now let's look at tip number 7. So this is tip number 7. Let's look at tip number 8.
Yeah, so the tip number 8, we are talking about how we can generate documentation, automatically generate documentation for Bicep template by using PS Docs. So it is good. It is a good practice to document the changes in your Bicep infrastructure. So with this PS Doc tool, we can generate README file, uh, which include all the resources, modules, then the parameters, variables, and other component related to Azure Bicep. So this will help for team to understand what are the resources provision, and if there's a new colleague who are joining to the team, then they also can easily refer the documentation. So there's a great blog from another MVP, Taoyang, So from his blog, you can find how to use PS docs to uh, uh, generate a README file for Bicep. So I highly recommend for you to go and check this blog post for more information.
Great. And another tip, additional tip for tip number 8 is that you can, if you have Copilot installed on your GitHub repo or VS Code environment, you can also utilize that one to understand the code. It is a new innovation that Microsoft introduced through the, Microsoft Ignite that happened this November. So that's another tool on your belt that you can try. But this is a tool that was there before even that, GitHub Copilot was in place. All right. Then tip number 9 here, it's all about ACR, which is Azure Container Registries. And developers should consider using those Azure Container Registries to provision control, to version control the organizational Azure Bicep modules for several reasons. And those reasons are listed here. First, ACR provides a private module registry that can be used to share modules with an organization. Second, ACRs allow developers to publish and store their modules in a centralized location. Third, you can have ACR that provides a version control over modules, which means that developers can keep track of changes made to the modules over time. So you can see what changed from previous one and roll back if there's a need. Then you have number 4, where ACR provides access control over modules, which means that developers can control who has access to those modules. And finally, ACR provides a geo-replication of modules, which means that developers, as a developer, you can have local copies of the modules in different Azure regions. So if there's an issue in one region, you are not going to be affected. Now, tip number 10.
Yeah, so tip number 10 is how we use modules in Azure Bicep. So modules is a way of reusing your Azure resources for your resource provisioning. So there are several advantages of using modules. The first one is it will help to simplify the deployment process because you don't need to write multiple resource definitions for multiple environments or resource types, right? So it
Right.
will reduce the amount of code duplication. So that means you don't have to, if you want to provision 10 storage accounts, you don't have to write the same resource definition multiple times. You can call the module and um, uh, pass the parameters, then it will can provision. Right. So they improve and it also improve the quality of the code. So it is much more easier for you to understand, and it is modularized, and uh, for for quality code quality, it will improve it, and it will improve the scalability and flexibility of the code as well, because we modularize, we can easily scalable using additional features. You can easily add additional features to the module or settings. Then
Mm-hmm.
all the other when you deploy it again, then those uh, additional components will be added.
Nice. Yeah, and the example that you see here on this slide, the My module, is a module that's being used to deploy a set of related resources. And as you see, we have name property that specifies the name of the module, while the params property that's in the same file specifies the any parameters that needs to be passed to the module. And now tip number 11. This tip is also very valuable. it it shows you the power and usefulness of insert resource feature that comes with Azure Bicep. This feature allows developers to create Bicep configuration from existing Azure resources in Visual Studio Code, which means that it will increase your productivity if most of the resources were deployed manually via Azure portal and they are already exist in your Azure environment, so that as a developer, you can consider this feature of Azure Bicep to insert resource for existing Azure deployments because it will allow you to get the reference of an existing resource and auto-generate that inside your Azure Bicep code. So this feature is specifically useful when deploying a resource that needs to get a value from an existing resource in Azure environment. And tip number 12.
Yeah, so tip number 12 is following a standard naming convention for your bicep template templates. So it is a good practice to follow a specific standard naming convention for your team, and uh, that that naming convention should be applied to the bicep template as well. So with good naming conventions, it will the whatever the code, the bicep code you are defining is more clear and descriptive. So when you include names, those names should be descriptive names and consistent between all the resources and resource resources naming conventions. For example, if you are using a lower camel case for your variables, defining variables, then all the variables should be follow the same standard. Then if you have a specific resource definition, naming convention for bicep resource definition, then you should follow that specific standard for you, for that agreed for your team. Then there are some bicep functions that you can use to generate names like unique string. So it will help you to generate a unique string for your resource definition, because in Azure some resources need to have a unique names for that resource. So that function would be helpful. Then other uh, feature that you can use is template expressions. So that means if you want to create an variable parameter and assign value, then you can use templates expression like this showing in the example. You can see I need to define a parameter called mm, app service app name. So then for that name, I can use different type of variables and parameters, and we can concatenate it each other and create a name for that.
Okay, awesome. So we had like these 12 tips, but let's summarize them and see what were they and what you learned from this lightning talk. So in summary, you learned today about the tips and techniques how to create and maintain your infrastructure as a code using the Azure Bicep, right? You learned about beautiful things that Bicep extension brings in this during this festive months to you as a developer, so that you can decorate your Bicep Christmas tree with parameter decorators, and as well as regenerate those snowflakes in your Bicep modules the whatever way you want to do that, and as well as standardize your happiness and make it even more happier with festive Bicep naming conventions that we just mentioned. So that said, let's look at the references that you can use to get even more information and goodness out of this Azure Bicep event and technology. Yes, Kasun.
Yeah, so we have community GitHub repository that you can follow, you can use. In there you can find a lot of good information about Azure Bicep, uh, useful blogs and useful articles from other contributors that contribute to that GitHub. And we are co-authoring a book for called Infrastructure Management with Azure Bicep. It is already available in Amazon for pre-order, so you can check out that book as well. Then you can find the Microsoft Learn module learning path for Bicep Fundamental. So if you are going to get started with Bicep, then that learning path would be a good start for you.
Yes, and I will just say that for more learning tips and everyday things that you do on Azure Bicep or any other infrastructure as a code, check out the Kasun's and my LinkedIn page. And ping us back or let us know what do you think about our upcoming book and anything that you are trying to learn and do in Azure Bicep. All right, that's it. It's time to say thank you again for organizers of this great festive tech calendar event, and as well as say thank you to you, to our valuable viewers who spent this time with us to learn about Azure Bicep and how to make your festive months even more happier.
Yeah, thank you very much for all the participants. So we wish you all a Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays.
Happy holidays, everyone. Take care. See
Yeah,
you.
take care. Bye.